it was so widely used and they attached his name to it. And he's not that kind of guy. He just doesn't want to be associated with that, but he's stuck with it, It went all over the world, Bernie Kratky method.
Welcome to Richard Hawes' YouTube channel, which looks at what we can do today to make Hawaii Island a more sustainable place to live so our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren won't be priced out of here and will be able to stay in Hawaii and live good lives here. Today, we are doing something a little bit different. We wanted to talk with a guest who isn't able to be here live with us. So Richard and I are going to talk about him and his work. So Richard, today we're talking about Bernie Kratky, right? He's a retired horticulturalist from the University of Hawaii, and he's known for what has come to be called the Kratky Method. So let me just read my little sentence here that explains what I understand it to be, and then let's talk about it a little bit. The Kratky Method is a passive hydroponic technique for growing plants suspended above a reservoir of nutrient-rich water. It looks like a very simple system, but I realized that it's been very highly and widely regarded. I actually know that because I was looking it up and I found there's a Wikipedia page that links to so many different places where he's been published, journals and professional papers and such. So I thought that was interesting. Richard, when did you first meet or come to know Bernie Kratky?
I met him a while back. I don't know exactly, but what he had to say made so much sense to me because I'm a practical farmer and the farmer has to make money in order to farm. Yeah. So when I look at his system, it was so simple. As a matter of fact, it was kind of cutting edge, yet at the same time, it was so simple that I have a feeling that people just don't appreciate how innovative his system is and how practical it is. And that's the value of it to me.
Yeah, I noticed that too, because it doesn't require a pump. It doesn't require electricity. It's something you could just put together very simply. And sometimes people don't realize the value of something like that isn't more sophisticated looking.
Yeah.
Let me talk about Bernie and his background for a moment. He received his PhD in 1971 from Purdue University, their horticulture department, and majored in weed control. That would be very applicable to you now, wouldn't it, Richard? You're out there doing the same sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Bernie Kratky worked at the University of Hawaii Horticulture Department from 1971 and the Beaumont Agricultural Extension Station in Hilo until 2010. He worked on the culture and management of vegetable crops. And in 1985, he took a sabbatical study leave at the Asian Vegetable Research Center in Taiwan. And it's there that he learned about non-circulating hydroponics. Tell me why this is such a significant topic, these sorts of simple hydroponic systems.
It has application from a 5-gallon bucket that you can have, youngsters come around and look at it and explain to them how it works, and then just leave it until it's ready to harvest because it has all the nutrients in it, so it can be approached at that level. Or you can make it bigger. It actually works for people's homes. You can just set it up in a way that it's under the eave of your house, as long as it has the right amount of sunlight or wherever you position it. So that can be done, and it can be done on a larger scale as well. So the technology has been around and became very popular with Bernie Kratky. His name is associated with it all over the United States for sure.
Isn't that interesting? Will you describe sort of how it works?
The advantages of this system is that you don't need weed control because there's no weeds. You don't need irrigation because on one end is a place where the nutrients are set up, and it's set up in such a way that the amount of nutrients that you have supplied matches the crop. So you don't have to worry about fertilizer. So there's no fertilizer leaching and losses because it's not going into soil and running off. You don't need expensive tillage machinery. There are no soil diseases because everything's clean. No nematode. No need to do soil fumigation. As you mentioned, no need to use electricity and pumps. And one of the biggest advantages is that once you're through with a crop, you can turn around and replace it immediately. You don't have to wait, 18-month fallow period. You don't have to worry about that. So there are many advantages to this.
Yeah, that's great. So walk us through it. You have a plant, like he talks about lettuce a lot. You have a plant, it's sitting in what? It's sitting in a little bit of soil, or it's just the roots?
Actually, it's a little square material that you put your seeds in, and that goes into a net pot. The net pot sits and touches the water. So the water is going up. Now, as a plant grows, its roots start to come down and it starts to take up water, and the bigger it gets, the more water it uses. But what happens is that air gap between the water level and where the plant is, that's where the plant takes up oxygen. So you don't need to pump oxygen. The plant gets oxygen just because of how that works. So it's tremendously simple. It's so simple that people feel like they need to make it more complex, like it's exotic science. It really isn't.
It makes me wonder, is this a way that people have farmed for a long time, or is this something new that he came up with? Is this, sometimes you see these very simple farming systems and they've been used for hundreds and thousands of years. Is this something like that?
Not really, but it's as if you were talking about that person from Japan that he learned from when he was in Taiwan. Yeah, that was when all the things started clicking for him. And it's relatively new. It's not like something that people have been doing forever, or at least they have not described it like that.
Okay. Now, is this what you were doing with your hydroponic tomatoes at the farm?
Not the hydroponic tomatoes, but we were growing lettuce too. And we did the same exact process that he's talking about. We did that.
The Kratky method. You were doing that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we knew right off the bat, wow, this is simple. This saves money. And the whole deal was farming is really hard, and if you don't figure out your costs or if the pluses do not exceed the minuses, it's not sustainable. So we're always looking at cost benefit, all the procedures that you use. And that was such a clear thing that I picked up on it immediately. As soon as I saw it, I went, holy smokes, we got to do this.
Yeah. And you said that he popularized this some years back when he was at the University of Hawaii, and that it was widely being used around the country. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was so widely used, and they attached his name to it. And he's not that kind of guy. He just doesn't want to be associated with that, but he's stuck with it, It went all over the world, like Bernie Kratky method.
So people know, farmers know what the Bernie Kratky method is, some of them.
Yeah, if they choose to go in that direction, and because the alternative is like in Hawaii, you plant it in the ground. That's quite different than what he's talking about. His is hydroponics, yeah.
Yeah. And so has it fallen off, or are people still using this method?
No, people are still using it. Like I said, you can do it at your house. You can grow your own stuff. Anybody could do it, and you could train younger kids and stuff like that. But there has been new developments, new methods coming up. And whereas the University of Hawaii was leading the whole country, the whole world practically, we've fallen behind. So that's the situation as it is today. Because when I was talking to Bernie about this, and he explained everything, and then I started to look, oh, you know what? They've got a gutter system now, the same basic principle, but now what they do is they wick the fertilizer from the solution that's in the gutter and in bags of media, and it wicks it up into the bag. So that's a little bit more advanced, yeah, which is quite interesting because, again, let's say you're doing sweet potato. If you can grow sweet potato there, it's perfectly clean. So you can harvest and sell almost everything. And then because you don't have to lay it fallow, it's not growing in the ground, there's no diseases, nematodes, etc. You can clean it up and do it tomorrow. And then what I like about it is, all you got to do is check the water. So you can have your kids, go check the water.
Yeah.
That's all they got to do. And you can go do whatever you're doing as a farmer. Maybe you're growing cattle or whatever you might be growing, yeah? So you can have multiple income streams, yeah? And you have the whole family participating.
Yeah, that's great. So using the Kratky method or the slightly more advanced methods that we see now, what all can you grow that way? You can grow lettuce, but what else? Is this something that can be used for pretty much anything?
Well, they're talking about ginger, they're talking about turmeric, they're talking about sweet potato. And in our case, we're looking at Okinawan sweet potato, yeah, because it's so popular. Although you could grow other kinds of potatoes as well.
Are you doing that? Are you growing sweet potatoes? You never really stopped farming, did you?
I've always had it on my mind that I really like to do Okinawan sweet potatoes because there's a whole bunch of things, like we had a podcast talking about taking the sweet potato and making flakes out of it. So that's another aspect of this that's totally new. We need the university to help us do some experimenting, figuring out the numbers so that the general public of farmers can see what the economics look like. Because as is right now, everybody got to just keep on trying, yeah? If the University Extension Service did it, then from one place you'd get all the information that you need. It wouldn't take very much at all.
Is there anyone at the Extension Service that's interested or working on this? Do you know?
Well, I know that at the Extension Service, they're very interested, because we have a new dean, yeah? So that person is new. And there are a lot of things that he has to assimilate to figure out what's going on. But the fact of the matter is, this whole thing is Oahu-centric. That's where the population population is. And we got to grow stuff here and ship it to get to Oahu, adding costs. And we've got the land and we've got the resources. We just need an organization or some experiments to be, focus on the end result that we'd like to get, which is food production, because we're importing too much of our food and we're depending on fossil fuel too much. And we are sitting out here in the middle of the Pacific. But our advantages, of course, is that we have sunlight all year round. And on the Hamakua coast, we're so lucky because the rain falls on Mauna Kea, comes down through the rocks and soil, and it takes 4,000 years from the water to fall as rain to come out in our springs, which means that the chemical content of the water is stable, so it's predictable. We have so much resources if we could sit down and figure out how we're going to leverage it for future generations.
Right.
And that's building on Bernie Kratky's system. That's essentially what it is just moving it into the future.
Yeah. You were talking about the wick and wedge technique.
So the gutter system is where you've got the nutrients coming from a container on one end, and that container has the fertilizer in it. Then every so often, you've got a wicking system where you place your bag of nutrients. It looks like a pillow, the size of a pillow, and you put it on top of the wedges that's sticking up. And what it does is it absorbs the fertilizer from the gutter system. So now that's what grows the potatoes in, or turmeric or ginger, those kinds of things, which is a little bit different than lettuce. We were talking about lettuce. It was pretty straightforward. But you modify it to this, then all of a sudden you hardly have any throwaways, and then you don't have to lay fallow. You can come right back in.
Bernie Kratky was saying also that when you start up a system like the Kratky Method, the initial cost can be really low. You just need net pots, hydroponic fertilizer, seedling medium, and you could start up probably for less than $50. So that is just amazing. And it can be started out without having to invest in land. Like you said, you could do it right under the eaves of your house. I guess that's so you're controlling the rainfall, right? Have it outside, but under the overhang of your house.
Part of the reason why you need that overhang is so that the water doesn't fall and fill up the container. And then what'll happen is it'll drown the roots. What happens is as the plant gets bigger, the water goes down, the roots absorb more oxygen, but the water goes down until it's harvested. Mm-hmm. But you don't want it to be raining on top of it to fill the water back up. That's what you gotta avoid.
Because then the plant cannot get oxygen?
Yeah, essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
But people do all kinds of things that apply to their particular situation. So this isn't a one size fits all kind of a thing. You just adapt to what works for you.
Right. But how interesting that came out of this place, that he figured that out here with his interest in weed control. He found a way to have no weeds, and he took all the conditions here and figured out this really great system that people started using all over the place.
I know. And Bernie is a person who's very concerned about economics, and that's what all us farmers are concerned about. The cost. And he's always about cost.
Yeah.
We needed to put some money into our extension service so that we can do some experiments so we can get some numbers. That's what the people really need, is some numbers. If they had the numbers, they would go, holy smokes, I could do that. Because, for example, in his references, they do different kinds of potatoes, and he has numbers. Doing that system results in this production, this type, this production. So he has numbers. And that's what we need, is numbers.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I also want to add, for anyone who's interested in all of this, that Bernie Kratky also has a YouTube channel. It's called Grow Kratky, Kratky. You can search that up at YouTube, or I'll put a link to it in the description below. And it looks great. He has all kinds of videos on interesting things, like there's one about growing cucumbers in plastic water bottles. You can tell he's into what's the easy way to do this, that makes sense. He has one about a yogurt container float valve, and all sorts of other interesting things. Have you grown cucumbers in plastic water bottles?
Not me. I haven't. I know what this is about. I haven't used it except for the floating raft system when we were doing lettuce and stuff like that. What I like about it is that you can grow something like that and teach young kids how this thing works. And they can start to imagine.
Right. And it's simple. They get it. They can do it themselves. They can grow from there. Well, Richard, that was an interesting dive into Bernie Kratky and the Kratky Method. Thank you for that. And thanks everyone else for watching. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Richard Hawes Vlog. Ahui ho.
Aloha.